You're watching HFO TV.
Well, I'll give us a quick update on the market. Activity's been, from a seller standpoint, it's been great. Number of deals in Vancouver, transactions been really, really low. I mean, there's been one that we were involved with, a new construction deal, which actually had the Comcast issue. I think it set the market at about $140,000 a unit, brand new construction. Not a pre-sold, it was leased. They closed it when it was 95% leased. So that was about $137 a foot, just located about a mile over this way. Other than that, in Vancouver, there has not been a lot of transactions. But, the market as a whole, we've seen on the large institutional size, a lot of capital chasing very few deals. Cap rates are as low as we've ever seen, and look probably to stay that way at least for the next 6 months. On the private kind of 100 units and under, it's just really been a lack of product, which has driven this pricing where it is. And then there's not a lot of options if you want to stay in a multifamily, if you want to sell your 50 unit and trade into a 100 unit. Again, you're very limited. We get calls all the time with buyers that want to look, and I'll say to them, hey, I'd love to get you in the car and drive you around, and we go look at 20 properties. There's probably not 20 on the market that fit your criteria, so it's a very tight market, which is, again, driving this pricing where we are today. On the rent side, as you all know, rents have been great. I mean, Vancouver's always been a little bit behind the rest of the Portland metro area. We're just approaching around $1 a foot up here. We're over $1 on some of the newer construction, but your bread and butter stuff's right around $1. Vacancies are under 4%. So from an operation, it's been great. The last 2 years have been really good. We don't have a lot of new construction up here. Most of the new construction you hear about in the Portland market is concentrated in the core. So downtown, close in east side, kind of up the I-interstate corridor, and then west side kind of fueled by Intel. Little pockets of new construction in Vancouver, but nothing like it was 10 years ago when we had a lot of construction on the east side of Vancouver, towards Camas, Washougal. Took a while to absorb. We're just not seeing that. There's some master plan developments downtown, but as we all know, downtown Vancouver's really never taken off. It's just taken a little bit of time. So there's a potential of more units coming online here, but it's nothing like what we're seeing downtown Portland, close and east side, and then some of the larger projects on the west side. So all in all, with rates where they are, as Trevor said, rates where they are, it's a great time to look. We're telling people, if your hold horizon's 5 years and under, you probably want to look at doing something now just because of the buying power buyers have, where interest rates are and where cap rates. If your horizon's longer than that, great. Look at your existing debt. If you have debt, it's a time to lock in some of these rates if you think interest rates are going to go up and kind of ride this out. But I don't see that we'll see cap rates continue to compress as we've seen the last 2 years. I just don't know how much lower. I mean, it's an example, brand new construction, institutional grade product is selling, if it's in the core, 4 to 4.5%. So basically what they're saying is they're going to pay all cash and get a 4 and 4.5% return if all their assumptions are right moving forward. It's getting pretty skinny on a return basis. On a leveraged deal, when you start putting debt on, they want a spread above where the existing debt, but when you can borrow at 3.5%, 4%, we're looking at 5 to 6%, 7%. Once we start getting over 7 in our market on a return, the building's got some uniqueness to it. Maybe it's got small units, maybe it's got some improvement issues, things like that. So I mean, it's as tight as we've ever seen and as aggressive pricing we've ever seen from an underwriting standpoint. So that's kind of a snapshot of the market today. And I'll just open it up for any questions regarding market, operations, anything. Oh, one other thing we're going to talk about too. Trevor brought up about the taxes. You've got 45 days to appeal your taxes in Washington. So if you're going to do that, we need to get on that. And then the other one too is things that we get asked a lot from both Oregon owners and Washington owners. The legalization of marijuana, what is that going to do in my property? There's a little handout in there of what it is. I mean, you can still have your building as a non-smoking building. They can also vaporize marijuana too, so there's that issue there. Is it medical? Now, the states, they're probably going to think the states are going to come out and say you can't produce and grow, but the usage is going to be an issue. So that's something to keep an eye on. And what happens in Washington is going to come and happen in Oregon. And as more states legalize it, I think it'll be a bigger issue across the United States. So, any questions?
So you can make your building a non-smoking building, but
right.
You prohibit people from using or having marijuana on your property?
Well, I mean, so if they've got the question is they got a medical marijuana, so it's like a prescription. You can say we don't allow smoking, so if they come in, so I've done many inspections and we'll walk in and they've got a vaporizer. So it's a non-smoking apparatus, it's a vaporizer.
I hit somebody for that because he was disturbing his peaceful enjoyment of his neighbor by the vapors, because it does make fumes.
Right, right.
If he had a card, though, you could run into
You could
a
run, yeah.
And
accommodation.
I evicted him anyway.
Yeah.
Because he got convicted.
So, I mean, that's going to be the issue. I mean, and then, if states are legalizing, hey, that you can grow for your own use a certain number of plants. So what does that mean on the patio of the unit I own? I'm going to see I mean, it's a slippery slope, but we're starting to head down it. So, yes.
Greg, service animals,
Yes. Same issue.
yeah.
Same issue.
Are there any guidelines, though, for complexes in terms of how the dog has to be identified up front before they move in, or they sneak an animal in after the fact and find out, and then they claim, oh no, it's a service animal?
Well, we've had that happen. And again, it's usually not the dogs are the issue; it's the other thing. Hey, my service animal's it's a pig, it's a lizard, it's a snake. The one moves in, and I didn't have it when I moved in, but I don't know if anybody here has a service animal, but I didn't have it when I moved in. Something happened. I got a service animal afterwards. It's kind of like getting a medical marijuana card. You just got to find a doctor to write a prescription for it, and you're kind of good. So it's tough. That's a really, really touchy, yeah.
So what if your lease says that if you want to bring in an animal of any kind, you have to get prior written permission from the landlord?
You can have that, but the question is that a service animal? I mean, they would probably be required to come and let you know, yes, I'm going to have a service animal now. You're going to see a iguana in the unit. But does that mean that if you say, well, no, when you moved in, you didn't have the iguana listed, but now I'm going to have...
When they moved in, they didn't have it, but that lease says that they have to notify you.
Right.
before they bring it in.
That would be fine. Yes, that's fine.
So one other, just a heads up, there are a number of websites that will sell them for $67 a kit, including a position on a national registry, okay, which Fair Housing will accept, okay? It's a $67, we're going through this right now. And for $67, this dog, which was a breed restriction dog that we did not approve, the people who lived there for years, never had this dog, then the dog came in, the letter from the physician is not a physician, it's from a mental health
Right.
psychologist who had not even seen the patient in over 2.5 years. So we're now dealing with HUD for housing on it.
But if you don't have a letter from a doctor, this website will refer you
To a
where
news
you
site.
can get one online for a few bucks.
It doesn't really have to be a doctor. It can be,
No visit
this is just from a
necessary.
housing training. It can be
Anybody?
any provider. Could be-
Right.
Could be a counselor. That's right. for the purposes.
Any other questions? Comments? Beer, wine. No, so thank you for coming. Like I said, we do take the comments that you say about what you want to talk about. We do take those to consideration and try to put these on that, are topics that's kind of relevant at the time. So, I mean, this marijuana one's been a big one since they legalized it. The other example, the big topic we're dealing with now is Section 8. In Oregon, they passed Section 8. You can't say your building will not allow Section 8. So there's a big issue on that. Does that mean if typically Section 8's a year contract? What if I don't do year contracts in my building? Does that? And so there's things like that that are coming up across the board. And usually whatever happens in Oregon and/or Washington is going to cross the river eventually from a tenant advocacy group. So that's something to keep depending on where you own, keep your eyes open on that. So those are kind of issues that have kind of come.
Non-HUD too.
So it used to be if you owned a building, you could say, we don't take Section 8. And the idea was it's really not, I'm not discriminating against a tenant. It's I don't want to get into a contract with the government because that's who's paying the Section 8. So now they've come back and said, no, look, you can't do that. You have, if they meet all the qualifications, and when you say, so if you say, hey, you've got to make 3 times the income, they're going to count the income that they would get from Section 8 to their income. If they meet all those qualifications, you have to treat them as any other tenant. So then where a lot of groups came back and said, yeah, but HUD or Section 8 wants annual contracts. They want an inspection beforehand. So then the ownership group said, well, wait a minute, if you come to me and I say, you're Section 8, I say, okay, you can have the unit, typically they need to be inspected first. So how much time do I need to give for inspection? Because if this tenant comes, I don't have to wait 3 weeks for Section 8 to come inspect the unit. I can move them in right away. So now they're trying to work through that system. And then the other one is, if I say I only give 6-month leases, Section 8 going to sign a 6-month lease? The Housing Authority of Portland has said they're trying to work that out to where it's going to be smoother, and they're going to work with the landlords. We'll come and see, but the gist of it is you're not able to say we won't do Section 8. Now you could come and say we don't do year leases, and if Section 8 says that's all we take, well then you're not really discriminating against Section 8. I'm just choosing not to do a year lease. So there's some ways to kind of move around that. And then the other hot topic is going to be, from a legislative standpoint this year, is going to be guests. How to deal with guests on people's properties is going to be the new hot kind of topic. And the example they use from a tenant group is, I'm a tenant, my son gets not evicted, my son gets, do not come on the property anymore because he's caused problems. Does he have the right to come visit his father or his mother, though I've told him he can't be on the property? So originally the police said, well, if you could designate where he can go to get to his mom, that's not going to make any sense. So that's going to be a huge issue on what are the rights of an owner to say, look, that person is not allowed on this property. It doesn't matter if it's your son or daughter. Sorry, how do we deal with that? But that's kind of the hot new topic now that Section 8's gone. So those are things to look out for.
Would that still be applicable if they have been criminally trespassing?
Even then, I mean, that's the thing. So that from the landlord's perspective is by doing that and allowing that person on, what is my obligation if he's not a tenant, if that person does damage, property damage, causes other damage, does something to another tenant. So that's where the tussle is going to be from a legal standpoint. So yes. And that's the thing. In California, they're trying to pass now where you can't discriminate against criminal record.
Yeah,
that's the new one too that's going to be coming up. And they're saying, basically that it's predatory because if you look at the demographics of people with criminal records, it fits into a minority group that has a higher percentage. So then so that's going to be the next, that'll also come up next year as to how they want to deal with that. So again, things to keep an eye on. Now again, they'll probably put a caveat if it's been any, property damage, personal damage, or things like that, maybe you can exclude them, but we're waiting to see on that one. And that's what the landlord-tenant groups are fighting with the tenant advocacy groups right now on how they're going to word that. And that's in California already. And parts of sub-municipalities in California have that already. So there's a length of, if they have a eviction or they have a foreclosure, what's the length? Now you can say, no, that doesn't qualify, but that may change. So.
Greg, when we went to the meeting at you,
Yes.
the panel that you had talked about gang activities and stuff inside of, and it was all East County.
Yes.
What about on this side of the river?
A little bit. It's not as prevalent as we see in East County. I mean, every city's kind of has, but it's not as prevalent as East County. No, East County and Portland's got a much, much higher percentage of that. A lot of the crime is up and down light rail. Again, I don't know if that's why Clark County doesn't want it to come across the river, but I mean, we see that on the apartment side, but not as much and not as concentrated here. There are some pockets here that, but nothing like out there in Rockwood. Yeah, I don't know if anybody here owns in Rockwood, but if you do, we can talk about that, but that's, so, yeah, the activity's not as bad. Any other questions, comments? No? Good. Okay, well, thank you for coming. We'll stick around if you have any, we want to talk individually too, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching HFO TV. To learn more about HFO, call or visit our website.